Everybody, meet Chris.
Lesbians, meet!
Consider, if you will, the quintessential 90s sitcom, in which a group of hip young friends all live together in a humongous New York apartment, joking every week about their lives and loves and sexuality. I speak not of Friends, but of the show that came before, Living Single, a queer-friendly sitcom that offered America wise words on overcoming homophobia while asking the important questions.
So, girls, Peppermint Patty, is she or isn't she?
All aboard and welcome to Matt Baum's Culture Cruise, a journey through LGBTQ milestones in TV and film. This month, we're heading to Brooklyn for the Living Single episode Woman to Woman, a celebration of lesbian love, but also a fascinating barometer of just how much the country's attitudes about queer issues changed in the first half of the 90s. At the start of the 90s, Primetime's first same-sex wedding ceremony appeared on the show Rock. And while there's some differences between Rock's story and Living Singles, they're similar enough that you can compare the homophobia that's expressed on Rock.
Now, I can fully accept this.
With Living Single, which just 5 years later shows the main characters embracing their queer friends. So, what changed? By the way, Culture Cruise is made possible by folks on Patreon like Jessica Shook, Seth Bernard, and Tony Lacosia. If you're enjoying these videos, head over to patreon.com/mattbaum, and don't forget to hit that subscribe bell for more videos like this. So here's the premise for Living Single. It's a bunch of roommates living together in Brooklyn. Queen Latifah plays the wise house mom, Kim Coles plays the spunky one, Max is the hard-boiled lawyer, and Regine is the gossip. It's kind of like the facts of life, and in fact, Regine is played by Kim Fields, aka Tootie, so there you have the facts of Living Single. The episode in question starts with some extremely sitcom-y setup dialogue.
You know, I just can't believe my girl's getting married.
That's Max, the high-powered attorney. Her college roommate Shayla is coming to New York to get married, and she's bringing her fiancé Chris with her, along with a mysterious secret.
Did I used to date this guy?
No, you did not, because this guy is a lady. We get the sitcom standard audience reaction. Listen to the oh my god happening just off screen.
Hey, guys.
This feels a little dated today, but in the 80s and 90s, every time a queer person appeared on screen, the audience would go bananas.
This is Miriam Goodman, my lover.
That your wife has been seeing my husband.
Mr. Emerson? Hello, everyone.
I wish people did that whenever I entered a room. Anyway, the plot is now officially thickened with the gay marriage. But this wasn't the only gay marriage this season. For reasons we'll talk about in a few minutes, there was a whole run of gay marriage episodes in a very narrow window from 94 to 96. It started with Ron and Eric on Northern Exposure, then Roseanne did one a year after that, then Friends had a lesbian wedding a few weeks after Roseanne, and then this episode of Living Single came a few months after that one. I talked about this phenomenon a bit more in my video about the show Rock, which featured a same-sex wedding ceremony back in 1991. I've got a link to that video in the description. That episode of Rock and this episode of Living Single have some strange similarities. For one thing, they both start with a guest star traveling to town to come out as gay before marrying a fiancé named Chris.
You see, I'm gay, and Chris is a man.
Everybody, meet Chris.
But there's also a few differences. The Rock episode involves the couple being interracial, and while Rock is about a family member getting married, Living Single is about a friend. But the context for that family versus friend difference is important, because around the mid-90s, Friends started to function more like families on TV. Prior to this, sitcoms tended to either revolve around groups of coworkers or around biological family, and sometimes both, like on The Dick Van Dyke Show. Chosen family sitcoms certainly existed before this, like on Three's Company, but around 1990, we saw a rise in shows that centered on chosen family, like Seinfeld, Ellen, Carolyn in the City, Sex in the City, and, of course, the ultimate sitcom about a group of cohabitating friends, The Golden Girls, which had a lesbian coming to town episode of their own.
Lesbian. Lesbian. Lesbian.
It's weird to think about now, but back then, this format was regarded as something of a novelty. In fact, when Friends turned into a big hit, Murder, She Wrote, which occupied the same time slot on CBS, did an episode parodying Friends with a murder on the set of a show called Buds.
Who would have thought a group of 20-something young people sitting around all day long discussing their sexuality would turn out to be a top TV show.
The weirdest thing about that, of course, is that Murder, She Wrote and Friends were both on TV at the same time? That seems like it can't be true, right? But yeah, they overlapped. It's weird. Murder, She Wrote, surprisingly modern. Anyway, on sitcoms like Living Single, friend groups operate in much the same way that Family did on shows that came before. And learning that her friend is a lesbian really shocks Max. To the show's credit, there's never any sign of overt homophobia, not even once. They immediately accept Shayla and Chris. But Max is clearly upset about something. It turns out she doesn't mind that Shayla's a lesbian. She's mad that she wasn't told.
I'm sorry. I mean, I tried to tell you for years, but every time I called, I just couldn't find the words.
I'm gay is a real toll saver.
Well, that's easy to say now. Max isn't really acknowledging here how hard it is to say those words, to take a chance on someone, especially back then in the 90s, especially in the 80s when they would have been roommates. Shayla had no way of knowing how Max would react, or how it would affect their friendship. And as kind as everyone is once the surprise wears off, the outing itself clearly creates at least some amount of discomfort. Listen to how the tone changes from when Shayla arrives
Hey, girl.
to when she comes out.
Hey, girl.
Max is unhappy that Shayla kept this a secret, and after a commercial, she pours her heart out in the kitchen to Khadijah, played by Queen Latifah, who it turns out knew Shayla was a lesbian all along.
Does everybody know? What is it, the joke's on me? She just wanted to tell you in her own time.
This is a plot point that this episode shares with the lesbian episode of The Golden Girls, which also involves a bit of secrecy.
You told everybody but me?
Honey, I didn't even know if you'd know what a lesbian was.
I could have looked it up.
I don't think Living Single is copying other shows at all. I just think that the dangers around coming out and of outing were inherently a part of many queer people's lives at this time. And with that in her own time comment, Khadijah's pointing out that it's up to Shayla to decide when she comes out and to whom and under what circumstances. And I don't think that line's meant to apply to just that one character, but more generally to say that everyone should be able to choose how they talk about their personal life. Queen Latifah herself, in real life, has always been very firm that she just doesn't feel like sharing personal details about herself. So saying she wanted to tell you in her own time is probably meant to be a gentle reminder that everyone's entitled to have control over how they talk about their own life. But Max is still mad. She confronts Shayla again at the bridal shower, and Shayla reminds her that in college they bet each other $10 on which one would get married first, and she tries to pay up.
Why don't you keep it? You hold on to things so well.
Okay, clearly they need to talk this out, and Shayla drops one more big surprise.
You didn't think I could handle having a roommate that was gay?
No, I didn't think you could handle having a roommate who was in love with you.
Now that is an act break. Max is left speechless for a moment, and then she says that she won't be attending the wedding. Shayla storms out, Max is left brooding by herself, and their differences seem irreconcilable. It's important to note here that this episode is about what was a very political topic at the time, same-sex couples getting married, but the episode itself never touches on politics. Instead, the story is exclusively personal. Outside of the show, gay marriage, as it was called at the time, was a huge deal and frequently in the news. In fact, I wrote a whole book about the personal stories behind the fight for marriage equality, Defining Marriage, now available on Amazon. One reason for all the attention to marriage around this time, and one of the big cultural shifts that happened between Rock and Living Single, was the 1992 presidential election. Issues affecting queer people took a much more prominent role than ever before in that election. Republicans staked out a strong homophobic stance. Here's Pat Buchanan at the Republican National Convention.
Militant leader of the homosexual rights movement could rise at that same convention and say, Bill Clinton and Al Gore represent the most pro-lesbian and pro-gay ticket in history, and so they do.
Contrast that with the speeches at the Democratic National Convention that year.
The gay and lesbian community is an American family in the best sense of the word.
HIV was a major issue, as it had been for a decade. But now, so is military service, and adoption access, and non-discrimination laws, and of course, the big one, marriage. Queer issues were constantly in the news, and they appeared increasingly in pop culture, in sitcoms, in mainstream movies, in music. This was the year that Melissa Etheridge and Katie Lang came out, notably at Bill Clinton's inauguration.
Well, I'd like to say right here, I'm very proud to have been a lesbian all my life. For
years, anti-gay activists had managed to block queer people from ever appearing in media. Here's Jerry Falwell arguing in the 90s that gay and lesbian characters should be banned from television.
That we do not want the gay and lesbian lifestyle paraded in the living rooms of America's homes.
But around this time, civil rights groups started to get a lot better at countering those arguments and pushing for more inclusion, both in entertainment and in politics. Here's Kate Kendall, head of the National Center for Lesbian Rights, clapping back at him.
We should be depicted in prime time in the same way any other family structure, any other individual is depicted, because there is nothing wrong with lesbians and gay men and the way that we live our lives. We're contributing and we should be honored for that.
Obviously, Kate came out on top in that argument. In the years that followed, she was a major force in pushing for more LGBTQ representation and also in the fight to legalize marriage equality. I interviewed Kate about her work on marriage and on the media on my podcast, The Sewers of Paris. You can hear about that on sewersofparis.com and look for episode 203. So, back to living single. With Max and Shayla facing the end of their friendship, what's to be done? Ultimately, Khadijah is the one who helps Max see things differently.
The entire time y'all roomed together, did she ever try and come on to you?
No.
Okay, so she played it cool. That's how much your friendship mattered to her.
That is a perspective Max hadn't considered. That maybe Shayla was keeping it a secret, not just to protect herself, but also to protect their friendship, thinking her crush would put a wedge between them. In other words, not coming out might have been a sign of how much Shayla cared. So Max reluctantly goes to find Shayla. She's at a salon being attended to by a very enthusiastic hairdresser, and we have the Act 3 confrontation. Max is still angry.
I mean, you basically told me that our whole friendship was one big lie.
But pay attention here to the source of Max's anger.
Well, think of all the time we wasted, all the conversations we didn't have, all those chances I would have had to dish your dates.
She's not actually mad at Shayla. She's mad that homophobia, even just the fear of homophobia, got in the way of them being as close as they could have been. Their friendship is something that clearly both of them valued. Shayla tried to protect it by keeping it a secret that she thought was a threat. But to Max, the real threat was keeping secrets from each other at all. Sitting there in the world's most spacious hair salon, they recognized that they both wanted the same thing the whole time, for their friendship to endure.
Maybe if you would have confessed all this back in school, maybe I would have freaked. But the point is, I wish you would have given me the chance to rise to the occasion.
I think that's a really telling line, and one that really sums up the historical shift that was happening in real life. Compare that to the end of the Rock episode 5 years earlier.
Now, I can fully accept this. But more than anything, I want you to be happy.
In contrast, Max is 100% accepting here. And what's more, she refers to accepting her friend as rising to the occasion. It's a moral good, something lofty to aspire to. I do wish we got to see the wedding. This is the one episode in that wedding bonanza that didn't actually show a ceremony. Still, it's a pretty amazing evolution in the way that pop culture talked about LGBTQ characters. Max, as a straight character, is essentially saying to the queer character, give me a chance to be better than the homophobia that you've encountered in the past. The word chance is important here because it is a chance. A lot of straight people, especially back then, didn't respond well when someone came out. Max doesn't say, I would have risen to the occasion. When given the chance, a lot of people didn't rise to the occasion and still don't. We're still dealing with disproportionate employment discrimination, violence against black trans women, and also a White House that's trying to make it legal to turn away LGBTQ patients. But politics aside, Max recognizes what she needs to do on a personal level, and she's asking for a chance to try, to test herself and see if she would indeed rise to the occasion. It's something that America as a country was still testing out back then, still trying to figure out, will America rise to the occasion? And so far, the answer's been yes, but slowly. And unlike this episode, it still hasn't reached a happy ending. Land ho, we're pulling into port. Thanks for cruising along with us. And remember, if you're enjoying these Culture Cruise videos, you can help keep them coming by going to patreon.com/MattBaum. And also hit the subscribe bell. The algorithm loves that, and so do I. Thanks again to everyone who makes Culture Cruise possible. And now, if you'll excuse me, there's still a killer on the loose on the set of Buds.